What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, and alongside with me, as always, on this Victory Monday, Shannon White. How you doing, my man? How you feeling after the huge win?
Oh, it's always good after a primetime win. Any win's good, but a primetime win against the Jets under the circumstances was awesome.
Yes, sir, it was. Throughout the game, I just kept picturing you wooing everywhere as Beanie Bishop just kept interception after interception out there. I knew that must have been a really awesome moment watching the kid believing in him since before he was drafted. How
Mhm.
was that? How was his performance in your eyes?
I mean, that's what I've come to expect. I mean, he's been isolated a couple of times in recent weeks where there's been a little bit of injuries and everything going on in the store secondary.
Mhm.
And so you've seen a little bit of your normal rookie struggles, whether he's a draft pick or a undrafted free agent. But people have been a little bit harsh on Beanie, and I kept telling everybody, keep the faith. The kid can play, and I mean, you've seen his ability to tackle. We've seen that, and we also see his ability as a playmaker and his speed. So I was really so happy for him to get his first two interceptions on Sunday night with the national audience against Aaron Rodgers. That's pretty sweet.
That was. You think he got that autograph on that ball, or do you think he did? Aaron did it for him.
I doubt it.
It seems like he was he wasn't too confident either himself. But I thought it was an excellent performance by him, an excellent performance by Russell Wilson. Apparently, Mike Tomlin knows what he's doing when it comes to putting the players in the right positions and when to play them. Russell Wilson goes out there, kind of struggles a little bit early on. I was a little bit concerned. Were you pulling for Justin Fields after the first quarter?
I was concerned about the matchup. I thought you'd do it against the Giants because when you do it against the Jets, they got the number 3 pass defense in the NFL. Now, they do have a lot of injuries back in their defensive secondary. And I think Tomlin didn't care. He thought it was time. And I wanted to see all season, I wanted Wilson to start, and I wanted Fields to ease in and have certain packages so he could learn behind Wilson. And because you see the difference. There's throws last night that Wilson made that Fields would have never thought of making because he don't have that touch. He's got plenty of arm. He don't have that touch and that confidence that if he does throw an interception there, that he ain't going to be benched or taken out. So Wilson don't. I mean, at this point in his career, he has so much confidence, so much faith that he can make them plays. And if it's a one-on-one, especially with Pickens or Freiermuth, he's like, put it up and let him try to go get it. And you've seen how it opened up everything. And it will open up the play action. And I still think you need to get Fields in there a series or two or, circumstantial because, he's one of your most explosive playmakers and you want his legs to make a difference. But, this is less pressure for Fields, will help him mature and be ready for the future opportunities. And I think the way he handled the situation is top class. I mean, we watched Rudolph do similar when he was here and handle things classy. And I think Fields has done the same thing.
I do too. When it comes to his maturity and where he's at and his accountability, it's definitely what you want in a potential future franchise quarterback, which is exactly what Russell Wilson said as well. He says that he sees Justin Fields as a franchise guy, and somebody maybe perhaps in the future that can take over the reins. Once if he stays here and once Russ is done, but man, I kind of thought this was going to happen, that they were going to go with Russ. I know there was a lot of controversy in the week leading up to this game, or the days leading up to this game, about so many people who were against the decision. There was a lot of media outlets putting out there that Mike Tomlin this was his decision solely. And making it seem like he was going against everybody else in the organization. And I'm not necessarily certain that's true. I think that was just, the media's being the media trying to stir up controversy.
Mhm.
But I just felt like, Russ going in there, taking care of business, leading up to this game. Like I said, I thought this was going to happen, and mainly because it felt like the offense was it was playing as if the quarterback was the backup. It was cutting the field in half. There was some easier concepts that were out.
Mhm.
Not put the ball in the middle of the field, avoid, risky plays, so to speak. And I've just hoped more than anything, I was just hoping that there was more to this offense and that maybe perhaps with Russell in there, if they trust him a little bit, we would probably see a more expanded version of Arthur Smith's offense, which I think we saw. And, I'm excited. This for the first time in years that I can remember, probably 2018, if I'm being honest,
Mhm.
where the offense looked like an NFL offense. And, and that was, around Ben's couple last, that was the year before he blew out his arm. I felt like this offense looks like it can go some places. Now I know it's just 1 week, but I personally think that Russell Wilson's going to get better. I think that he had some balls that were underthrown, even when he was starting to heat up or so.
Mhm.
Yeah, with time, he's going to build that chemistry with those players and really dial it in. What are you thinking with Russell Wilson as far as do you think this is who he is? Do you think he can get better, or you think this was just a first game? Maybe we should wait.
No, no, he'll definitely get better. It was, as you say, Russ had to knock the rust off,
Yeah.
which, it was very rusty at the first. But the week prior against the Raiders, we talked a little bit about it last week. There was 5 throws that I singled out that Fields had time, a pocket, and he just missed. He just missed them. And I said, make those 5 completions. That's a different offense. And I said, if Russ can make the routine plays routinely, then this offense is going to look different. Well, last night, Russ made more than routine plays. I mean, he put the ball in a position to where it was kind of a 60-40 for his guy, but he trusted his guy to either catch it or not let it get intercepted. And you
Mhm,
throwing the ball like that to George Pickens, he's begging for it. You
mhm,
throwing it to Freiermuth, that great one-handed catch. He had a drop by Austin. It should have been a first down in the first drive.
mm,
Um, so I mean, we seen, as I said, and you said earlier, Arthur Smith felt comfortable calling, I think, more of a complete game plan because they had faith in Wilson and his experience. And Wilson had the confidence that if I throw a pick and or something happens, they're not going to set me immediately. And
mhm.
so if they get, because Tomlin, I think, has had some handcuffs on Arthur Smith and on this offense. And I think he just has that amount of faith in Wilson that he kind of took a step back and let Arthur Smith do his thing. And it really worked really well. The play action hasn't looked that good. I don't know because Ben didn't like play action. So the play action looked really good last night.
Oh yeah, I mean his Russ's stance with when it comes to play action, I think he was like 75% had much of his yards on those plays as well. No touchdowns. All of his touchdowns were on drop back passes
Yeah.
outside of the one that he rushed in. But one of the things that I liked about it was the distribution. I mean, when we look at the targets, um, 9 targets for George Pickens. Calvin Austin got 4. Darnell Washington got 4 targets. Van Jefferson and Pat Fryermuth had 3 each. I mean, he was spreading the ball around, and he wasn't, in my opinion, being a check down Charlie. That was one of the things
No.
that I think a lot of people were kind of concerned about when it came to his style of play, and he just seemed aggressive. I think he knew that, hey, if I want my career to end in the manner that I wanted to, I'm gonna have to push the ball down the field to these great guys that he has on the outside. And I thought he did a fairly good job at that. Dennis comes in with a $5 super chat saying, Russ has me sold. but we have a great backup in Fields, not to mention packages eventually. That's true. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm hoping that they will figure out a way to utilize Fields because, again, he's such a dynamic playmaker, and you want to keep him in the offense and engaged mentally, so that if something wants to happen to your older starter, he could come right back in and not miss a beat. So, yeah, I'm fully expecting him to get some action. I think last night they just was like, okay, we're going to give Wilson all the opportunity to knock the rust off and show what he can do. So I was fine with that.
Yeah, one of the other things too that I really thought was a huge important thing was the discussion that all right, you're going to put in Russell Wilson in this game. The offensive line is riddled with some injuries, and there's been some players, mainly Broderick Jones, who's kind of struggled a little bit. And even in this game, he had a play or two where Russ got sacked. The one that he got sacked on, it was on Broderick. But a lot of the concern was, they're going to blitz the Steelers offense, and Russ is going to get sacked multiple times. He was only sacked once, and that the Steelers are going to miss the legs of Justin Fields. And I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm sure there was some opportunities there that if Russ, or if Fields was in, he could have taken off. But what I thought about what Russ did was he pushed that blitz and he pushed, those defenders from the Jets back. And this is wow. They had a depleted secondary where, if your secondary is depleted, you want to help them out by blitzing the opposition, apply pressure. So that way it covers up some of the mistakes that might happen in the backfield. And they weren't able to do that because of the threat of what Russ was able to do regardless. And once they did that, and the running game got going real good too. Now, I'm really excited about what this team offensively is going to be able to do moving forward. 37 points against a really good defense.
I
You
thought
can't beat that.
I thought it was interesting that it was almost like Russ had Collinsworth in his ear. I always want to mute Collinsworth, but it was like, well, Russ throws the moon ball and Russ needs to throw it down the field. And Russ, that's what the Steelers offense is missing. And it wasn't 2 plays later, the 44-yard throw to Pickens. And then it just started snowballing.
Mhm.
And when it looked like the game could get away from them, right there before the half, and we saw Beanie make that one-handed interception, his first one. That was one of the momentum-changing plays of the year for the Steelers. And if the Steelers make the playoffs and continue to grow, we're going to look back at that interception and what a big play that was. Because the Jets had already got 2 first downs on that drive and was looking for a big chunk play down the middle. And we seen, just a great play. There was a lot of one-handed catches. Pickens made one. And then we know Freiermuth made one. The one that Freiermuth made, if you watch that was a zero blitz. There was nobody deep. And Wilson got rid of that ball like in under 2 seconds. And he just lobbed it right over to where he come down. The only guy could get it was Freiermuth. And he made a great one-handed catch. But again, those plays were so critical. Now, in the second half, as the game went on, the Steelers took control. But those were plays that had to be made to get to that point. So those money plays were huge last night.
Oh yeah, honestly, when I saw the ball being thrown to Pat, I thought it was an overthrow. I was
It
like,
looked like
oh,
it, yeah.
I was like, he's wide open, and then he put enough air on it
Bumped
that
it
he
in.
allowed it to get down to catch it. I was like, wow. And some of the other catches that were pretty impressive, like the one-handers from Pickens and the bobble circle catch and the back shoulder one that he had with the guy all over him.
Mhm.
Those that may have been a little bit inaccurate or a little bit low, like I said, I think with chemistry and time together, that's going to get a lot better, and that's
Yeah.
only going to mean this team is going to get that much better. And and what can be said about the offensive line? McCollum and McCormick there in the middle. I mean, that was impressive. They
Yes.
were going up against a stout New York Jets front line, and they took care of business for the most part. McCollum is a pretty pretty good center. I mean, he's not Zach Frazier by any means, but I think that he can be a guy that can be a fill-in for either center or both guard positions if need be. And with how many issues the Steelers have had on the offensive line, he's a good player to have on the team. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the Jets were like, we're going to test this young man. And they put Williams, their best defensive lineman, right over him. And then he got the holding call. And then he had a little bit of penetration allowed in the first half. And I was like, I'm a little bit nervous. But, boy, once he got his bearings and got in his rhythm and started working in unison with McCormick, especially, as you mentioned, and Samalu on the other side, the interior, they shut that up. They shut that down. I mean, they
Mhm.
started creating running lanes. We seen Warren and Harris, finding room to run. And I thought at later in the game, McCormick was winning those matchups. And I was so happy for him because, the Steelers have went through 2-3 years of poor center play. And they draft Frazier and you got that next stud guy. But I think you got you a heck of a backup minimum with McCollum because he
Mhm.
looked excellent once he found and a guy who can work in unison. That was what Cole did best. When he had Daniels and Somali next to him, he could work in unison with them. Now he didn't do good if he was singled. If he got isolated on a top tackle, he struggled. But I tell you, I see McCollum later in the game take some one-on-one isolation blocks and do really well. So yeah, that was a breath of fresh air.
It definitely was. And I know Frazier's not going to be there for the Giants game. He's probably not coming back, obviously, until after the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
And when he does, and when he's healthy enough, he's going to be right back in the lineup. But yeah, McCollum's a good person to have going back and forth. And like I mentioned earlier, as and we'll go into the running game, as Russell Wilson began to take care of business over the top and through the air, that eased up the
Mm-hmm.
defensive pressure, and we got to see some really big runs from Najee Harris. You know, I caught the Behind Your Enemy Lines podcast. I don't know if you caught it with Jeff Hartman and the Jets fan from Fans First Sports Network.
No, I seen it, but I didn't get to listen to it.
Well, I listened to it, and he was super confident. He's like, "Man, we want Russell Wilson, and we want you guys to run Najee up the middle. Be careful what you wish for, my man."
Yep. Sometimes be careful.
Real quick before our break, we got Dennis coming in with a $5 super chat. Najee is running hard. I'd love to see the last two games. He looks like he's running back, the running back we thought we were drafting. Well, he's actually got some space to move and some space to get back to move the ball forward. I think when he was on the field beforehand, without the threat of the throw,
Mhm.
and having him back there, it was all right. He's going to run the ball. Let's target him and put everybody on the line. It doesn't matter. They're not going to throw deep anyways. And I
Yeah.
think that had a lot to do with why he was struggling so much. But man, you see what you can do if he got some space. He made him hurt.
Yeah, I think that as I've said before, if Harris, doesn't lose momentum and runs uh full speed uh into the line, hit this designated hole or make a hole, you can count on 3 or 4 yards. If he tries to go lateral, if he tries to go sideways, the play's over.
Mhm.
He's going to lose yardage. So as long as he's pointing north and south, the Steelers are in great shape, and that's his niche. Now, when they do the outside runs, they had a little success last night, but it was to Warren.
Mhm.
And now, if you notice, but by the fourth, they had backed off because Wilson was hitting them passes. It backed the safeties back. They wasn't a stack box. And then Harris had more room to get outside a little bit. Now he can't do wide outside, but he can get outside the tackle. And then one cut and go. And I'm telling you, last night on one of his successful runs, it was to the left, and he went out one cut, put his foot in the ground and burst forward. I think it was 8 or 10 yards when they were wearing the Jets down and taking control of the game. He looked like Franco Harris. He really did.
Yeah.
When he runs upright, he's a taller runner, and that's Franco wasn't super fast, but he knew how to. He always took hits from the side. He never took hits head on, so he could always still get some positive yardage. And I watched Harris Najee last night do that more and more as he found his rhythm. And we know running backs love 20 carries. If they can get that 20 carries, then they're wearing that other team out. And the Steelers offensive line, they was enjoying that. And that's why I like to see it. By the end, they were just imposing their will.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And they were beating them up. I mean, not to, the injuries, some of them more serious than others, and not poking fun at any of those things, but the Steelers were laying it down on the Jets physically, and they were getting very, they're getting out of it. They were out of the game. A lot of players got hurt. It was kind of, you can kind of tell like the Steelers were in it to win or in there to play. They were focused from the beginning. I don't know if you saw the Russell Wilson press conference or pre-game conference interview that he had on the field, but like he was like, I'm ready to run through a wall. And, I think that the Jets were looking at their shiny old new toys and
old new toys.
Yeah. And we're just kind of thinking to themselves that, hey, we're just going to walk in here and take care of business. And they got punched in the mouth. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after a few moments. Don't go anywhere. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, Shannon White. Before we get back into conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, steelcurtnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check that out daily, hourly, every 20 minutes. Breaking news comes out. You'll get up-to-date information on your Pittsburgh Steelers day or night. If it's breaking, we're putting it out there. So go check it. And while you're there, you can check out the audio-only podcast where you'll see and hear my audio-only podcast that airs out on Saturdays at around 11 a.m. called State of the Steelers. And yes, Afton goes, just get those likes up 100%. Now, this game at first, and I think Dave Schofield put it out there on the Twitter Xverse that he felt like the refs were kind of manipulating the game in a certain direction, especially early on in the game. I felt that way as well. There were some calls that were being called for the Jets, not being called for the Steelers. And there was some very ticky-tacky calls that shouldn't have been called. And the most egregious of the stuff that we had seen was just how physical the Jets cornerbacks were on the Steelers wide receivers, especially with George Pickens. And he wasn't getting anything. I think he only got one. And so what was your thoughts? And I'll lead off with the Minka penalty, but what were your thoughts in the moment and how do you feel today?
I agree totally. I understand, if they wanted to call that on Ogunjobi for tackling the Breece Hall, he did have him round up with the helmet and he threw him down pretty hard. But they wasn't a face mask, so they couldn't call that. But if you're going to call that, fine. Well, later in the game, there was 2 or 3 times that happened to our guys. No call. The leverage call on Minka was ridiculous. He was already going over. It was just he just happenstance barely touched either guy on either side, but it had nothing to do with the play. That's not what leverage is. Leverage is when you gain leverage and gain an advantage, which didn't happen. The thing I'm noticing is, as you said, Sauce Gardner especially, he was molesting Pickens down the sidelines every time, just grabbing and holding and pulling and jerking and it's like they're waiting to see if there's a catch, and then they're going to decide whether they're going to throw the flag or not. No, if it's been happening for 20 yards, the flag should already be out. Now, if Pickens catches it, that's irregardless. But like you said, they wasn't calling anything. And then the one they did call was like nothing compared to the other ones. But even then, you're like, well, are they trying to keep this game close? because in the second half, there was multiple times, everybody knows, and we talked about it, young offensive lines, a runner gets, up there and it gets stalled. They come in and push the pile and they get another 4 or 5 yards. Happens every game. Every team does it. They were calling quick whistles last night. They were blowing quick whistles before the Steelers had an opportunity to keep driving Harris forward. And they did it like 3 or 4 times on one drive. And I'm just like, where was that? What is going on? I mean, what's the deal with the quick whistles? So, I mean, again, there's so much talent. We come to watch the players or we tune in. I don't want to see yellow hankies and refs deciding the outcomes of these games. And we're seeing it, certain teams in particular, which I won't name, but they seem to always get the favorable calls because they're the face of the NFL. And it definitely ain't the Steelers.
No, it ain't. And and yeah, to a certain extent, all right, are they trying to keep the game close? But when that Minka penalty happened, that was a swing because the Steelers were down. There was 13 at that point. They're going to go up by 1. The Steelers end or by 7, and so the Steelers were still within scoring range, and this happens, and so I don't understand the idea of having it close by favoring the team that was leading. And at the time, Russ was struggling. The defense, Aaron Rodgers was pushing the ball down the field. It didn't really look like it was going to go in or become a tight game if things didn't get cleaned up. Fans were starting to boo. Justin Fields' chants were starting to happen fairly quickly. And, to me, I just kind of felt like maybe the NFL wants the Jets to be a team that's on the rise. They're from New York. You have Aaron Rodgers. You have Devontae Adams, George Washington. I mean, I figured still going with those guys.
Yeah.
But they have all these stars that have been around in the league for a while, and I just feel like they wanted them to be the team that wins, because then they can start to build up on their season. They'd be a better story, blah 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 blah. And I just felt like the Steelers overcame that so much they couldn't protect them anymore with the flags. But yeah, I just to me, that just screamed manipulation of the game for the Jets' purposes, not necessarily for them to win and keep it close, or not necessarily keep it close, but honestly for them to win. Didn't happen. Go ahead.
I mean, another thing I wanted to mention real quick while I'm thinking is, what does TJ Watt got to do to get a holding call? Or, I mean, the Steelers have got to figure out a way, because the way that they're utilizing him, he's too easy to focus on. I mean, there's always a tight end or a running back chipping him before he ever gets to an offensive lineman. And then it wears him down. He's taking extra hits, bumps and bruises, and it's letting other guys make plays, yes. But you're talking about the best defensive player in the world. And he's been neutralized the last basically the whole game. It's just hard for him to do anything. And to win a game like that, the way they won, and really not get your normal contributions, everybody can say what they want, but that just shows you how truly dominant the TJ Watt is, that that every team focuses that much attention on him.
Yeah, 100%. And his stats weren't the greatest. He had 1 tackle, and he had 1 pass deflected, and 2 quarterback hits on the night. One of them, I thought he was going to get a flag. That was the one where he actually pass defended, and when he came down, he didn't hit.
And then he kind of tried to hold him up. Yeah.
I was like, no. And I was like, oh, thank God they didn't throw it. I was like, must have had slippery fingers or something. It didn't pop out, because I thought they were going to call that.
I did too.
Yeah. He his presence right now on the field is allowing others. But there was another hold that was even worse. There was one on Alex Highsmith where the tackle
Tackle, yeah.
tackled him
Mhm.
onto the ground, arms around him, and then landed on him on his back. And it was, I was like, come on now, if you don't call that, what are we doing here? And so, those things weren't impressive, but I thought Larry Ogunjobi, the flags that is, but I thought Larry Ogunjobi had a pretty good game.
Yeah.
Obviously Beanie Bishop had an excellent game. We talked about him, but Peyton Wilson had the most tackles with 10 tackles, 4 solos. I thought that he played fairly well, and it looked like he's starting to get more of the reps out there versus, um, Elandon Roberts. What do you think about that? And what did you think about his performance?
Oh, it's just such a blessing to have two guys in Queen and Wilson that can run. But I'm telling you, Wilson can cover wide receivers. I mean, there
Mhm.
was a couple of times that he was in a trail position and on outside runs, and he run the guy down. That in the past would have been big runs against this defense. Wilson's speed, his intelligence, everything. We're seeing the normal growing pains, but my goodness, the young man is uber talented, and I consider him a starter immediately. I mean, I love Landon Roberts, and he has his niche. He's a lot like Vince Williams, but when it comes to just pure athleticism and a bright future, Peyton Wilson is the man. He's him. And last night there was so many times that they could have got a first down, and he caught guys short of the first down and made them punt the ball. I'm just really impressed with him.
I am too, and I think that the other player that I'm so impressed with this season is probably the most underrated free agent pickup in the last, I don't know, a few years, and that's Deshaun Elliott. I mean,
Oh
he has
yeah,
been playing out of
yeah.
this world. He had 6 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss in the backfield, had a quarterback hit, and this is your safety out there. And he wasn't playing on the line. I mean, when the ball was snapped, he was running down towards the line, but he was still a little bit, behind there. Quick speed, sure tackler. I think the Steelers have. I don't know how long they signed him for, but they need to extend him after the season.
Oh, he's been a godsend. I mean, the young man is incredibly gifted. He can play slot, he can play safety, he can cover a tight end, a wide receiver, running back. um, the play he made when he come up from deep secondary to make that tackle, the force of big fourth down in
Mhm.
the fourth quarter, was beautiful. Then he took off and run 20 yards down, thinking they're going to punt, and Rodgers ran up to the line, and the Steelers had to call a timeout so there wouldn't be a penalty.
Mhm.
And then and Tom was looking at him like, no, no, you got to they could have still went for it on fourth down, and he,
Right.
he kind of lost. I think he thought they were going to put, but um, Elliott is just been. I mean, he reminds me of Edmonds, but he's just more of a playmaker.
Mhm.
I mean, you just see it. I mean, he's had interceptions, he's had fumble recoveries. He can do it all. And so yeah, it's with Minka still not back into doing Minka things. The ball hawking hasn't returned yet. It's great to have Elliott because he's doing it all.
Yeah.
And I will say, uh, I got to give credit to the old timer, Cam Hayward. I mean, they know holding Cam Hayward because I don't know if you watch any of these replays. He's just tossing guys off of him. I mean, he's literally pitching guys. Looks like Reggie White back in his prime. They can't hold him because he just if it's one on one, he sheds them,
Mhm.
and he's getting pressure. He looks in his run defense. I think he's number one or number two in the NFL. So
Mhm.
he's having a resurgent season, and it's great to see.
Oh yeah, he's making that contract he got look cheap.
Yep, yep.
Wes comes in with a $5 super chat saying, "I'll name them. Kansas City Chiefs win games via penalties. It's why they're still undefeated, and the only reason." On TJ, get a couple of PFS PFs. So the eyes are on him. Yeah, 100%. And
That's who I was thinking, but I didn't say.
well, I mean, they got the million, what's making them some money out there in the stands. They show her every 20 seconds
Oh yeah,
during
oh
the
yeah.
Chiefs game. You can't get away from it. You would think she was the star of the show there. And so
Well, I tell you, she took Kelsey's balls and got him in her purse because he's just not the same player anymore. And I
you
guess
mean
if you stay on tour all summer and you don't work and hone your craft, and especially if you start getting older, you just fade away because he's just not the same player anymore.
you mean Mr. Swift, right?
Yes, Mr. Swift.
Mr. Swift. He's always changing his name. I think he was going to be Otto at some point. So
Yes.
poor guy. Well, anywho, defensively, man, across the board, I think this defense played well. They confused Aaron Rodgers. He actually, in his press conference, took accountability, which is something that, if he can get away with blaming somebody else, he will. And there was no blame there. The Steelers tricked him. They got him to think that the receiver was open over the middle. Beanie Bishop, I think he talked about it in his press conference after the game that they seen stuff on film that Rodgers likes to push the middle of the field. If he thinks he's got somebody open, he's going to push it in there. And so they manipulated that and forced him to push or made him think he had an open receiver in the middle, and Beanie did the rest. All in all, I mean, great game. Special teams come in with a blocked field goal. They should have had 2 blocked field goals, but they get the other one. From the line, interior defensive line, everybody just kind of, cheering on Danny Smith. It was a full team win, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Danny Smith, I've been hard on him through the years that he's the bubblegum chewing. That's what I always think about when I think about him, and I always wanted to put a lot of the blame for the bad punting. But they always getting holding calls when they're trying to block on returns. But this year, I really like the makeup of the special teams. You got Pierre back, you got Moon out there, you got Bishop, you got all these guys that have that role, and you have the block field goal, like you said. They've blocked punts. They've got the most block kicks, county block punts and block kicks of any team the last 2 or 3 years. So Danny Smith is doing a good job. I think he has a good group to work with. I really like the makeup of the special teams. And I'm going to give Corliss Williamson some credit. I mean, we had the guys we had when we had Presley Harvin, and it was a nightmare. But Williamson come in after having to replace Johnson, who went down with the injury. And I was so excited to have a really good punter. Williamson's been excellent. I mean, he's not shaking anything. He's getting good hang time, good directional kicking, and he's holding excellent. It seemed like it was a little bit of some of Boswell's kicks were not quite as straight when he first took over, but now it's right back down the middle. It seems like they're getting their rhythm and everything. So when you lose one of your prize free agent guys, and it turns out it was a punter, and you lose him, and you could get a guy like Williamson who's doing so good, he's been an answer to prayer because he's doing excellent, and I got to give that dude credit.
Yes. His name's actually Waitman.
Wait, but why do I keep saying Williamson?
No. But yeah, Carlos Waitman, dude, he had an excellent punt that was really close to the goal line, and instead of bouncing into it, it bounced backwards and allowed the Steelers to down it like at the 7-yard line. Great stuff, man. I mean, truly, the offensive, special teams, defense, the coaching staff, I think they called it an excellent game. 37 points. I think, a lot of people were impressed, which rightfully so. When the Steelers scored 3 consecutive drives against, I think it was the Colts and maybe even against the Raiders at one point. But the Steelers got 5, and 4 of them were touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like,
Who are these guys?
I don't know. It was amazing. And Chris Collinsworth kept saying every time they got in the red zone, like, this is where they've been struggling. And I'm like, are you watching the same game? Like, what are you talking about? He's been fire in the dang red zone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, one of the other things they just kind of rounding everything off, that I thought that could have been concerning, that I think maybe is a relief to everybody, is when Russell Wilson did those quarterback sneaks and was able to do so and get the first down.
Yeah.
I think that proved a lot about his capability with his right calf there. And so, I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this season. I'm excited for the next game. I truly think that the Steelers not going to give away the score, but are going to end up going 6-2 into the bye and really have themselves in a really good position to really make a run at an AFC North title and more.
I'm excited about the guys coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Corey Trice should be soon. Frazier. There's guys that were starters, or at least the first guy up, the next guy up, like Trice. You get these guys back. Hey, everybody knows I'm a big fan, but hey, James Pierre's playing good.
Yeah,
James Pierre is not just on special teams. He's not just a gunner. He's been in the defense, and he really is playing well. And again, with Trice out and some other guys, that's big that you can count on Pierre not to be the weak link. And he still struggles with ball awareness. Rogers got him a couple of times with the back shoulder throws to Lazard because he struggles with that. But, he's a solid tackler. And if the play's in front of him, he's very good. So, I'm like you. I think if they get these guys back, Cook, the backup tackle, he's closer to being back. And some of these guys, like McCormick, this was not supposed to be McCormick's year. It was supposed to be next year. But he was forced into action. Well, great job by Pete Meyer. He's got him ready. And great job by McCormick for fighting through the struggles early. And you see him getting better every week. So I'm like you. I can see this team is setting the table for what they can be.
I agree. And then when you see the struggles in the rest of the AFC North, Deshaun Watson goes down out for the rest of the year. I know DTR ended up playing in his absence, and I think even Jamarcus Winston or Jamal, I don't remember, Jay Winston. He ended up playing a little bit, I think, after DTR got hurt. It's probably going to be him going forward, Winston, and they might be a better team with Winston in there, to be honest with you. But Deshaun goes down out for the year. A lot of injuries across the board. Brandon Ayuk went down. He had his ACL. Yeah. And then he was one of the guys that the Pittsburgh Steelers were interested in. Another guy that the Steelers were interested in, Devontae Adams, has been beaten by the Steelers 2 weeks in a row. And so, there were some times when I saw him on the sideline there, and it looked like he was thinking, maybe I chose the wrong team.
Having Russell Wilson throwing you the ball or Fields, is eventually down the line, maybe. Because as you said, I think everybody wanted the Jets to be good, and they've got them on TV a lot. They wanted to showcase Rodgers. Jets went all in. They fired their coach, who was coach of the year 2 years ago, because Rodgers don't like him. They make changes to the offensive coordinator. They overspent for Adams, and now they're 2-6 or 2-5, whatever. They're 3.5 games behind Buffalo, and their season's in big trouble. That's a very Jets-like thing to do.
Oh yeah. It definitely is. No surprise there, and no surprise when this Steelers team ends up doing some damage later on this year. Well, I'll be here for it. I'm sure you will too, Shannon. Before we go, do you have any final words for everybody?
Well, I'm like you. I feel confident about the next game against the Giants, but you cannot take anybody lightly. It's a Monday night, and this is where they really got to be uber focused. and then get into that bag, get some guys healed up and ready for that second half of the season. But it doesn't look quite as daunting as it did earlier, as you say, with
100%.
some of the injuries and stuff that's happened. So I think they're setting themselves up to have maybe being a really memorable season. So, but the next thing they got to focus on is them New York Giants.
Yes, sir. And I think that's one of the things that when it comes to like letdowns and stuff like that, thinking that you're too high going into one week and then falling short the next week against an opponent that you probably should have handled business with, as we've seen with this team before. I think the main difference is going to be the leadership. The Steelers have Russell Wilson in that offensive huddle right now.
Yep.
And if you saw the way he was talking before the game, he was ready to rock and roll. And I don't think he's going to be taking any nonsense. If he has a Hall of Fame career to complete, which would require some Super Bowl wins, hopefully here in Pittsburgh, and he wants to fulfill that dream and fulfill that mission that he has, and he's the team captain for a reason. I think his leadership is going to be able to corral some of the players who may maybe get too high on themselves sometimes, bring them back down to earth and get them refocused into the game. There was one thing that I think we've all heard of in the past when it comes to, when games have been lost, even from new players to the team, is that they were like, we need to focus and practice this and a third. I think that's going to finally come to an end with a guy like Russ, with his resume, his ability, what he's shown that he can do. Even if it's just in one game, these players look like they've bought in. And they're bought into him, and they're all over him on the sideline. They're ready to rock and roll. I'm hoping, and I'm anticipating not seeing a letdown again, at least this year.
Well, I see a lot of respect for both quarterbacks, and that's nice. It really is. You want that leadership, and Fields handled himself like a leader, and Wilson, we know his leadership quality, so. I like it. I really do.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Dennis, give us another super chat. I like it. I'll take it. That would be 3 in a row with over 30.
Yeah, I think that's about 7 points too much for the Giants, but we shall see. We shall see. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're still here, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Shannon, take us out.
Woo!